You're curled up in your silk sheets, naked skin against a 600 thread count. Maybe you just had sex, and now you're basking in the gentle blue glow of your phone. You are a creature of comfort. Now, imagine that same skin, but in the 13th century. Skin, but it's caked in sweat, grime, and straw. Skin that is leaking milk. Skin that is bleeding. The smell of body odor, smoke, and animal manure. This isn't a movie. This is your ancestors' night. You're lying on your plush mattress, screen bright, your smart sleep app boasting 2 hours 37 meters of deep sleep. You think you have sleep tech? The medieval person would laugh in your face. They didn't have tech. They had each other in the most raw and brutal way possible. They had residual heat, microclimates, collective discipline, and tricks that will shock you. Stay close, because the third trick, if done wrong, was a killer. Do not look away. January 3rd, Wessex. The wind cuts like a leather whip. Inside the one-room hut, Edric's family is a micro-ecosystem of desperation. His old mother, groaning with arthritis. His wife, Elfgifu, 5 days postpartum, still bleeding onto the straw, breasts aching with milk. Her newborn wheezing, struggling to breathe the thick air. 2 other small, shivering children. And Edric. Their decisions tonight will determine who lives and who dies. And it starts with the only valuable thing they own, the chimney. The chimney isn't just for smoke. It is a vertical thermal battery. Built of massive fieldstones and clay mixed with straw, it soaks up heat from the cooking fire below. When the fire dies, that mass of stone still radiates warmth. The bed, a communal pile of straw, is arranged by an invisible thermal map. And here is the triage. The first-class seat is pressed against the warm stone. It's not for Edric. It's for the old grandmother, and for Elfgifu and her infant. The baby's life depends on those few degrees. Elfgifu leans her bare back against the stone, the warmth a dull relief for her uterine cramps. Farther out are the other children. At the very cold, exposed edge is Edric. He is the human shield. Your position in the straw is your exact survival value. Too hot, you get burned. A crack in the mortar leaks smoke. You suffocate. Elfgifu, exhausted, must constantly check, daubing wet clay into the gaps. You think that straw pile is dirty? Look down. The next heat source isn't the wall, it's the floor itself. Prepare to be shocked. In some regions, they deliberately dug the floor down and turned it into a living compost furnace. Here's the recipe: a layer of dry straw or peat for drainage. Next, a green layer of fresh leaves, kitchen scraps, and horrifyingly sometimes fresh manure from the cow or pig living in the next stall. This was topped with a brown layer of dry straw. Beneath their feet, billions of microbes were having a feast. That aerobic decomposition generated a tremendous amount of heat. The floor was, quite literally, slowly burning from the inside out, warming the hut from below. They slept right on top of it, on a thick, fresh layer of straw that separated them from the wettest, filthiest part. For Elfgifu, with a heightened postpartum sense of smell, the stench was a form of torture, a pungent, eye-watering mix of ammonia, rot, damp earth, and excrement. It was the ideal breeding ground for fleas and lice. She had to constantly check her baby's scalp, picking off the insects, feeding on him, but the price of cleanliness was freezing to death. The price of warmth was living in filth and parasites. In the spring, this entire living mattress was shoveled out onto the fields as prime fertilizer. A closed-loop system, waste became warmth. You think living over manure is bad? It gets worse. To get any peace from the parasites, they had to fumigate the entire hut like a smokehouse. This is trick #3, the killer. The smoke bath was part ritual, part hygiene, and lethally dangerous. Before bed, Edric would seal every crack, every vent. Then, he wouldn't build a fire, he would build smoke. He'd throw damp juniper boughs, bitter wormwood, and wet sawdust onto the embers. The goal was maximum smoke, minimum flame. The hut rapidly filled with a thick, acrid, choking cloud. Elfgifu, clutching her baby, would flee with the grandmother and children into the freezing yard, wrapped in cloaks, watching their home seemingly exorcise itself. The smoke, full of resins, phenols, and bitter oils, would permeate every fiber of straw, every seam of clothing. It killed the fleas, the lice, and their eggs. It also, they believed, drove out evil spirits and sickness. When it was done, the door was opened. The thickest smoke billowed out, but the heavy, biting odor remained. That night, they would sleep with less itching. They would wake up with sore throats and watery eyes. Elf Gifu's hair and skin would smell of this bitter smoke for days, overpowering the scent of her own milk. It was the price for a night free of being eaten alive. And if they made a mistake, a single spark on the dry straw, or carbon monoxide poisoning, and none of them would ever wake up. After surviving the compost furnace and the smoke bath, you'd think they'd have a hearty meal? Wrong. They practiced hunger sleep. It sounds insane, especially for a breastfeeding woman like Elf Gifu, but it was survival logic. With the winter pantry running low, dinner for the family might be just a cup of warm water steeped with bitter heather and a single piece of stale bread split 7 ways. Why? Digestion is a high-energy process. It pulls blood to the stomach and heats the body, but it's a waste of precious calories. By skipping a heavy dinner, their bodies saved every last calorie for basic, core heating. Of course, there were exceptions. Elf Gifu, because she was feeding the baby, would get a slightly larger piece of the bread. She ate it with a knot of guilt in her stomach, watching her other children swallow. A slightly hungry body also sleeps lighter, more alertly. Elf Gifu could spring awake at her baby's first whimper, or at a strange sound outside. Spiritually, in the dead of winter, fasting was a discipline, a ritual of acceptance. The thin gruel the next morning, therefore, tasted like a feast. Modern translation? We call this eating light. They called it their only option. Feeling a chill? Now, let's get in bed. This is the most explicit 18+ part. There are no private beds, no personal space. There is only the communal skin. Imagine a monstrous blanket, stitched together from dozens of cow hides, sheepskins, maybe even wolf pelts. It's crushingly heavy, thick, and still oily, with the animal fats rubbed in to make it windproof and water-resistant. At night, all 7 members of Edric's family, grandmother, husband, wife, 3 children crawl under this one covering. They tuck the edges deep under the straw, sealing every draft. A single collective organism is formed. This is where the raw reality of the Middle Ages hits you. Elf Gifu is lying there, pressed against her husband on one side, her newborn on her chest, and her mother-in-law snoring right next to her. The concept of personal space does not exist. You can smell your father-in-law's breath in a larger home. You can feel your brother-in-law's leg twitch against yours. You hear everyone's digestion, their snores, their farts. If someone turns, the entire mass of skin and bodies shifts. If a child wets the bed, everyone is damp. The price is 0 privacy. Inside, sweat, wool, smoke, and unwashed body odor. All of it mixes. Warm together or freeze to death together. That was the law. And sexual privacy? Utterly impossible. The communal skin is the enemy of romance. Any intimate act, if it happens at all, happens in the full knowledge of everyone else, inches away. You cannot moan freely. You cannot move without shaking the entire straw pile. How did Edric and Elf Gifu, a young couple, manage? They didn't. Or, if they did, it was a silent, illicit, fumbling, and almost animalistic act, while pretending the grandmother and children were fast asleep. It wasn't lovemaking. It was a mechanical release of a biological urge. The sexual tension in such a cramped space was real. You are lying next to your wife, but also next to your mother. You feel the warmth of your husband, but also the cold feet of your child. The touch of skin is constant, but it is completely non-sexual. It is touch for survival. And ironically, it's in this claustrophobic, asexual by force environment that another ritual begins to ease the tension. The whole family breathes in unison. This is their biological white noise. The mother-in-law, as the matriarch, starts the chant. The entire family begins to breathe in unison. She takes a deep breath in through her nose and exhales with a long, low humming sound. Elf Gifu, Edric, and even the older children follow her lead. They listen to each other. The small hut fills with a low-frequency somatic vibration. This is collective psychotherapy. That vibration, which you feel in your chest, in the straw, in your skin, acts as a powerful tranquilizer. It slows the heart rate. It calms the vagus nerve, pulling the body out of its fight or flight state. It also has a physical effect. The vibration in the sinuses can stimulate the production of nitric oxide, which dilates blood vessels, helping to warm freezing fingers and toes. From a group of 7 individuals, shivering from cold and tense from proximity, they become a single, breathing entity. Within 15 minutes, the baby in Elf Gifu's arms stops fussing. Her own shivering subsides. The wind is still screaming outside, but inside the communal skin, there is a strange, powerful peace. But the bed is still cold. The straw is still damp. This is where the women take charge. Since the afternoon, Elf Gifu, or her mother-in-law, had placed several smooth, uncracked river stones deep in the hot ashes of the hearth. Before bed, they used tongs to pull these stone batteries out. They are scorching hot. They wrap them carefully in 2-3 layers of old torn wool. Wool smolders rather than bursts into flame, and tie them securely. These hot stone packets are placed in the straw bed. One at the feet, one right behind the mother-in-law's aching back, one placed against Elf Gifu's lower back, easing the postpartum ache. The heat from the stones is a dry heat. It radiates out slowly, evaporating the dampness from the straw, turning the icy nest into a warm pocket. To crawl into the straw, then, is like crawling into a patch of autumn sun. The heat lasts for hours, enough to get them through the first sleep. This is primitive physiotherapy. For Elf Gifu, the warm stone is a godsend. For the old woman, it's the only thing that works. But it's also dangerous. Wrap it poorly and you get a severe burn, or worse, set the straw on fire and kill the whole family. Only the most sober, experienced woman is allowed to cook the stones. What if the wind is still cutting through the walls? They build a sleep cocoon. Imagine a massive sail of thick wool, coated in animal fat or linseed oil to make it windproof and waterproof. This heavy, greasy tarp is hung from the ceiling beams, dropping down on all 4 sides to enclose the straw bed. The edges are weighed down with stones. The result? A tiny tent inside the hut. A space of only a few cubic meters. The volume of air inside is minimal. The breath of 7 people will warm that tiny space in minutes. Inside this cocoon, the air becomes thick, humid, and heavy with human smells. The stench of the animal grease, sweat, smoke, straw, it's an 18-plus sensory overload. It is claustrophobic. In the morning, when they pull back the curtain, the inside of the cloth will be covered in a layer of white frost, their frozen breath. But it works. Outside the cocoon, the hut is 0 degrees Celsius, 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside, it might be 15 degrees Celsius, 59 degrees Fahrenheit. They are not heating the house, they are heating 3 cubic meters of air. That is spot heating efficiency. Warning: medieval cocoons were drafty. Never seal yourself in a small space in a modern home due to the risk of CO2 suffocation. And once warm, they don't sleep for 8 hours straight. That's a modern myth. They have biphasic sleep. The first sleep lasts for about 4 hours, from dusk until midnight. Then, the entire family naturally wakes up for a period called the watch. This is not a disorder. This is by design. This 1 to 2 hour window of quiet wakefulness is critical. The grandmother rubs more ointment on her knees. Elf Gifu breastfeeds her baby. Edric checks the drafts. And this is also the other chance for privacy. In a strange way, when the grandmother and kids have fallen back asleep, this might be the only time Edric and Elf Gifu can be intimate. It's a whispered, stolen act, performed right there in the straw, under the communal skin, while others are, or pretend to be, asleep just an arm's length away. It's not romantic. It's a basic need, met hastily in the only awakened window of the night. The next time you wake up at 3 a.m., don't panic. Your body might just be remembering its old 18-plus schedule. But how did they sleep with the smell, the claustrophobia, and the bugs? They had fragrance armor. This was the secret science of women. The straw they lay on wasn't just straw. Elfgifu and her mother-in-law had mixed in an entire herbal arsenal, the Attack Group, bitter wormwood and tansy. Their sharp, acrid scents are natural insecticides, repelling fleas and lice. The Defense Group, dried hops stuffed into their pillows, cloth bags. Hops are a mild sedative. Lavender, chamomile, and valerian root were scattered to calm the nerves. The Spiritual Group. In the corner of the hut, a bundle of Street John's wort was hung like a charm, not for depression, but to ward off nightmares and evil spirits. The gathering and drying of these herbs was the work of women and children all summer. They knew exactly when to harvest them for maximum potency. Before bed, Elfgifu might burn a small smudge of wormwood, letting the smoke permeate the straw. It was a combination of medicine, hygiene, and a little bit of women's magic, all to buy a few hours of peaceful sleep. Finally, when dawn breaks, the most important ritual happens over the meager bowl of gruel. The family interprets their dreams. This isn't small talk. This is their mandatory group therapy session. What did Edric's dream about a cow mean? Sickness or wealth? Elfgifu dreamed her teeth were falling out. She is terrified for her newborn. The grandmother dreamed of her dead husband. Is he warning them to fix the roof, or does she just miss him? Individual anxieties, the unspoken fears of the day, are released in symbolic form. The whole family decodes them together. The day's decisions, whether to risk a trip into the forest, whether to slaughter the last pig, could be heavily influenced by a dream. You can call it superstition, but the psychological value is clear. It was a mechanism for the community to share its deepest fears, bond, and create a unified plan of action. Sleep, therefore, was not an escape from reality. It was a tool to navigate it. It forced the woman to voice her anxiety, and it forced the men to listen. So, let's recap. You have an energy-free survival strategy, the thermal battery chimney, the compost furnace floor, the smoke bath to kill bugs, hunger sleep to save calories, the communal skin turning 7 bodies into one furnace with all its 18+ proximity, rhythmic breathing as a homemade tranquilizer, hot stones as personal warmers, the sleep cocoon for spot heating, biphasic sleep as a night shift, and the schedule, fragrance armor as medicine, and dream interpretation as group therapy. Back to Edric's house. The night is over, the baby is still breathing, the grandmother is quiet. At dawn, Elfgifu tells her dream, and the family listens. No one calls it biohacking. They call it surviving winter. And us? We heat an entire house to warm one body. We are lonely in our king-size beds. We spray toxic chemicals to kill bugs. We eat pizza at 11 p.m. and take a pill for our anxiety disorder. The lesson isn't to go back to living in filth. The lesson is the mindset. Heat the space you need, use waste heat, respect your body's rhythms, and, most importantly, the power of connection, even when it's forced. A group of people breathing in unison survives the winter better than a group of people just sharing coal. A communal blanket warms the skin. A communal story in the morning warms the mind. In our insulated, isolated age, that might be the warmest lesson of all. If this journey made you look at your duvet and your luxurious loneliness differently, leave a like, leave a comment if you agree. Smart heating is spot heating. And subscribe, because you don't want to miss the next episode.